Welcome back to the 43rd online episode of Peacetime, hosted every Sunday morning by Peace Point with myself, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, live streaming from our meditation centre in London, UK. Last time you saw me, we looked at blessing number 1, not associating with fools. The Dhamma talk today, we will continue our series on enlightened living with blessing number 2, associating with the wise. So today's session will run to about an hour and 10 minutes with a 25-minute talk on how to define the wise one and their telltale signs, 20 minutes of meditation, and then 25 minutes explain the qualities of a wise one's friendship and how to best associate with them. The second blessing of the 38 concerns how in our self-cultivation we can successfully close the door on unwholesomeness in our lives, to prevent ourselves from slithering any further down the slippery slope of spiritual entropy. At this point, when our discretion and sense of conscience is still not very accurate, we are not yet sufficiently versed in spiritual ways to become a wise one ourselves. However, what we can start by doing is to learn how to recognize others who are wise and to associate with them so that some of their discretion can brush off on us. A wise one is distinguished by his or her wisdom. Before starting this blessing, it's important to clarify that being wise is not the same as being educated. That wisdom referred to in this blessing is a discretion as to what is real profit in life, was already hinted by omission in our description of fools in blessing number 1. In fact, being educated is also a blessing, but its details are elaborated later in blessing number 7. The word wise one of this blessing comes from the Pali word pandita, borrowed into English as the word pundit. Some people believe that you can become a pundit simply by getting yourself a degree from a reputable university. Of course, if you've got all the credentials, set yourself up in business and made a success of it, you will earn praise and respect from many other people. However, there is no small number who end up behind bars despite all their academic knowledge. Consequently, in spite of all their good intentions, it is reasonable to assume that such pundits are not truly wise, but only wise in the ways of the world. The sort of wisdom we are interested in terms of spiritual knowledge, is the sort of wisdom that will, at the very least, keep us on the straight and narrow, and ensure a wholesome profit, both in this lifetime and the hereafter. This sort of wisdom is the spiritual knowledge we met up with in the previous blessing, although admittedly the wise person of the present day would ideally have wisdom both in worldly and spiritual ways. Being an educated person is not the same as being wise, since knowledge exists on 3 levels: theoretical knowledge, hands-on knowledge, and insight knowledge. Though we will revisit these 3 categories in more detail again in blessing number 7, suffice it to say for today that insight knowledge or spiritual knowledge is the definitive domain of the wise one. As a human being, having a body and a mind is standard equipment. So what can be blamed for the different amounts of success people meet with as they go through their lives? Assuming it is exposure to wise people in their surroundings that makes a difference, then zeroing in on such success relies on us identifying the wise ones around us. Pinpointing the special features of the wise one can be achieved in 4 interrelated ways. Firstly, by identifying their habitual behaviors. Secondly, their virtues. Thirdly, their perception of profit in life. And fourthly, their quality of mind or discretion. In effect, these 4 definitions overlap, the difference only being in emphasis. So the first way we're going to try to define the wise one is by their habitual behavior. A wise one is someone who habitually thinks, speaks, and acts in a good way. Unlike the fool, the wise one has thought characterized by loving kindness in place of hatred, generosity in place of greed, and right view in place of delusion. Furthermore, the wise one is wont to speak habitually in a good way. They are people well-spoken in contrast to the fool who has only a babble of insults to decorate their intelligence. There are 4 ways in which the wise speak good words. They avoid telling lies, avoid using divisive speech, avoid the use of swear words and harsh speech, and they avoid idle chatter. Lastly, the wise one is wont to do only good deeds, with an emphasis on being compassionate, earning an honest living, and marital fidelity. If we were to divide people according to the quality of their minds, we can generalize people into a minimum of 3 different types. Those whose mind is usually clouded, so the fools, those whose mind is usually clear, which means the wise, and those halfway in between, whose mind is neither entirely clear nor completely obscured by defilements. Most well-intentioned people in the world are included in this 3rd category. Traditionally in Buddhism, these people are referred to as Kalyanapala, where the prefix Kalyana means beautiful or good, while the suffix Bala is one you will recognize from the previous blessing as meaning a fool. The combination of the 2 words adds up to a well-intentioned fool. So people like ourselves are sometimes a fool and sometimes a wise person, but not exclusively one or the other. Another traditional term used in Buddhism for people like ourselves, who are halfway between a fool and a wise one, is Putuchana, where the prefix putu means thick and the suffix of chana means person. Being a thick person doesn't mean that we lack intelligence, but refers to a way we have a rind covering our mind that is thickened by defilements. Those whose rind of defilements is not too thick to block out the voice of reason can be referred to as a Kalyana Putuchana, because they still have some hope of scrubbing through those defilements to reach the innate wisdom that lies beneath. First step for a Kalyana Putuchana in working their way towards their own wisdom is to be able to recognize wisdom amongst their acquaintances, so that they can reference those wise character qualities when elevating the quality of their own mind. If you can't tell a wise one by their habits, you might try instead to identify them in terms of 4 traditional virtues. A wise one is said to exemplify the 4 virtues of gratitude, self-purification, purity, and endearingness. By gratitude, I mean they recognize the debt of gratitude they may have to others. By self-purifying, I mean they work to purify themselves of all unwholesomeness. By purity, I mean they encourage others to purify themselves of all unwholesomeness, and by endearing, I mean they make themselves useful to society. If we are still unable to recognize a wise one from their habitual behaviors or their virtues, then we might instead try noticing the way they perceive profit in life. In Blessing 1, we have already seen that the discretion concerning the nature of profit in life for a fool is different from that of a wise one. Profit in life in this 2nd blessing should mean both profit in the here and now and profit in the hereafter. The Buddha taught 4 ways in which the wise one perceives profits in the present lifetime, or to use the Pali word, ditta dhammikata payochana. In Thai culture, they are colloquially referred to as the 4 chambers of the millionaire's heart, or, more simply, the way to set yourself up in life. As we have said, being a couch potato is not a good predictor of success in life. Success doesn't come unearned. Even comfort in one's old age must come from hard work in one's youth. The wise will, while they are still young, store up the means to live comfortably in their old age, when they are no longer able to earn for themselves. There are 4 virtues which the wise ones use to seek profit in the present lifetime. These are firstly diligent acquisition, or uttana sampatha, which means going out to earn a living instead of sitting around all day and waiting for money to appear magically. The second quality is stewardship, or arakka sampatha, which means both saving and protecting what you have already earned. Thirdly, there's the quality of associating with good friends, or kalyana mittata, which means the same as associating with the wise, which is the title of this blessing, while avoiding associating with the sort of people who hang around all day at the bookmakers or even at the pub. Fourth and last, there's the quality of not living beyond your means, or samma jivita. This means being thrifty and spending your earnings. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't spend anything on yourself, but rather to enjoy your hard-earned income without undue extravagance. Since the wise person recognizes that they cannot live by bread alone, a second important level of profit in life is spiritual profit, better known as profit for the hereafter, or samparayi kata payochana. This again consists of four virtues, the first being faith or confidence, or sattha as it's known in the Pali language. This means faith that doing good deeds will lead to good outcomes for the doer, and that doing unfortunate deeds will lead to bad retribution. Such faith will motivate a person to perform the maximum of good deeds throughout their life. Those who are not fully endowed with faith have what's referred to as turtle head faith, which means that rather like a turtle, when the going gets tough in doing good deeds, they will hide their head inside their shell. But those who have strong faith, even though the going gets tough, they will still remain resolute in their faith and not have doubts. The second virtue bringing profit in the hereafter is to keep the precepts, or sila, as it's called in the Pali language. Any person needs to keep a minimum of 5 precepts because the precepts indicate the level of your humanity. If your precepts are less than perfect, then at some stage you will start to take advantage of those weaker than you. If you are a person who is unable to keep the 5 precepts, some people might prefer to share their home with a wild animal rather than sharing it with you, especially if they're constantly having to worry about whether you're going to harm them or steal from them. The precepts are a second important factor that contributes to happiness in the hereafter. The third virtue bringing profit in the hereafter is generosity, or chakha, as it's called in the Pali language. That we are alive and well today is only because since birth we've relied upon the generosity of others. If we had been abandoned at birth, it's unlikely we'd have got to be where we are today. And there are many forms of generosity we've benefited from, and to redress the balance, we should look for ways to practice similar generosity towards others, whether it be the giving of things, time, help, or knowledge, or even the gesture of forgiving other people. Fourth and final virtue bringing profit in the hereafter is wisdom, or panya, as it's called in the Pali language. To be specific, anyone who is diligent in studying the teachings of what the Buddha taught will attain wisdom eventually, which is the mark of a wise person. On the contrary, anyone who lies around in bed all day has no chance of accruing wisdom, at least not unless they watch Dhamma talks on YouTube all day. So, if the knowledge of life and the world we fill our heads with is accurate, then wisdom will be within our reach during our time in this world. The fool is one whose understanding of profit in life conforms neither with material nor spiritual profit in life. Thus we can say that the wise person is one who understands and works toward profit both in this lifetime and in the hereafter. Finally, if we are unable to identify the wise by their habitual behavior, virtues, or perceptions of profit in life, we might still be able to define the wise by their quality of mind, especially their sense of discretion. The mind of a fool is dominated by thoughts that are confused and stubborn, rather like glass that is opaque or frosted, distorting and darkening whatever they look at. By contrast, the mind of a wise person is like crystal clear glass. Everything they see is clearly defined as it really is. This is why they can respond to the world in a way that's appropriate and ethically sensitive, unlike the fool who is caught up in their own egotistical view of the world. The wise person is one whose mind is habitually pure, and such a mind has a snowball effect on those around them. You might wonder how such a vague notion as the mind could have such a powerful influence on people's destiny. But the way every dealing we have with the world passes through the channels of the mind means that we cannot ignore its importance. Consider looking at the world in a mirror. Whatever is situated in front of the mirror will be reflected instantly. Even a pocket-sized mirror is large enough to reflect an entire mountain. All it needs is for the mirror to be really clear in order to capture any object in a way indistinguishable from the real thing. So if the mind is crystal clear, it too can instantly notice, scrutinize, and understand any situation according to its reality. If our mind is not yet fully clear, meditation is the main means by which we can upgrade its quality. Once we realize the peril of having a mind which is dull, clouded, and of generally low quality, we can start to appreciate why meditation is so important in the prevention and cure of problems in our lives, at the very least to iron out the roller coaster of fluctuations in the quality of our mind throughout any day. By means of mental clarity, a wise one can discern what behavior is wholesome or unwholesome, good or bad, right or wrong. Many of the characteristics of a wise one mentioned before may not be immediately apparent to us because they are not overt. This is why we have to look at another 5 characteristics which are more easily noticeable from their outward actions. Firstly, the wise like to shepherd others to live their lives in a proper way. And by way of illustrating the opposite of this quality, in the Samanyapala Sutta, in the time of the Buddha, there was a renegade monk called Devadatta who was jealous of the Buddha and wanted to lead the Buddhist community in his place. Since he wanted to boost his own influence, he curried favor with royalty, namely Prince Ajatasattu. He knew that Prince Ajatasattu was impatient to replace his father, King Bimbisara, on the throne. He therefore tried to win over Ajatasattu by performing a minor miracle of shape-shifting his appearance from himself into a child and back again. This convinced Ajatasattu that Devadatta must have higher knowledge, although it was the monastic equivalent of a parlor trick. Having won Ajatasattu over, Devadatta gently groomed Ajatasattu to go against his own better judgment and depose his father, later imprisoning him and starving him to death, in order to win his place on the throne. Later, when Ajatasattu's own first son was born, he realized the love between father and son and felt remorse for his actions, seeking out the Buddha, who put him on the right track, but too late to save him from his retribution of the heavy karma of killing a parent. How much better Ajatasattu would have been if he had gone to the Buddha in the first place and associated with a wise one like the Buddha instead of a fool like Devadatta. Although both the fool and the wise person are influences in their own way, but their persuasion leads to different results indeed. Secondly, the wise person takes full responsibility for the things that are their own business. Apart from being responsible, they will influence those around them to be responsible in the same way. What the wise won't do is interfere in other people's business. They know where to draw the line in order to avoid nosing into others' affairs. The fool, by contrast, is much more interested in interfering in other people's business than they are in taking responsibility for what they're meant to be doing. Thirdly, the wise favor the honest and the decent. It's no use trying to corrupt them because they are above those sorts of things. The fool, by contrast, is proud of the fact that they can get away with anything in a race to the bottom. Fourth, the wise person is not easily angered. They are grateful for criticism from others, unlike the fool, who, even if criticized in the politest of ways, will lose their temper. This is why, if you recognize yourself as hot-tempered, it's especially important for you to associate with the wise as a way to gradually cool down your fiery temper. However, you shouldn't confuse the cool-tempered wise person with certain inert and unresponsive characters who spend the whole day napping and seem to do everything in slow motion. These dopey sorts are unresponsive to nearly everything around them, whether good or bad, and cannot be counted as wise ones. Lastly, the wise favor self-discipline and orderliness. When we share society with a huge number of other people, if we consider ourselves above the law, then we'll end up as sociopaths. As we shall see, the good thing about associating with the wise is that it will develop our discretion to mimic the wise with whom we associate. And on the inside, it will allow our mind to become bright and clear like that of a wise person. Now, with a view to cultivating clarity and brightness inside ourselves by associating with the wise one inside, let's take a break halfway for some meditation, which today is entitled, What's the Point of Meditating? So at this time, we settle ourselves down for 20 minutes of meditation. If you'd like to find a comfortable sitting position for yourself now as you listen to my guidance. So if you'd like to start by adopting a comfortable position for your meditation, closing your eyes and adopting a position that is upright and yet relaxed. Take a few deep breaths to yourself and allow your shoulders to drop. Make sure your eyes are closed only very gently, and invite the inner gaze to soften, bringing your awareness back to yourself, and allowing the awareness to soften as well. We start by relaxing every muscle of our body. We relax every muscle, starting with the muscles of our forehead, our eyebrows and eyelids, making sure the eyes are only very gently closed. Never squeeze the eyes closed, but close your eyes gently in just the same way you would close your eyes to go to sleep. Make sure there's no heaviness on your eyelids. And if you notice that your eyes are too tightly closed, or if there's any heaviness on your eyelids, you may need to open your eyes and close them again more gently. Close your eyes in just the same way you might close them to go to sleep. And then relax the muscles of your face. Relax your neck, your shoulders, both arms down to the tips of your fingers. Relax your chest, trunk and abdomen. Both of your legs, down to the tips of your toes. So it all the way from the top of your head right the way down to the tips of your toes. There's no remaining part of your body with any sort of stress or tension anymore. If you do notice any tension remaining in your body, then do your best to relax it completely. Because if your body is completely relaxed, you'll have the feeling as if your body seems to melt away into the atmosphere around you. And you have no further worries about your body anymore. From there you can turn your attention to relaxing the mind. We relax the mind by letting go of any thoughts we may have about the past or the future, while also letting go of any thoughts concerning responsibilities, concerning the labels you identify with in life, whether it be your name, your age, your gender, just letting all of that fall away. Also letting go of any labels concerning your relationships to others, letting go of all those ideas of self and instead just be. Just be the awareness. Just be in the here and now. You can also let go of any narratives you may have of who you are, your past, your future, your to-do list, or who you want to be. Just be aware in the present moment, accepting that there's nothing to do and there's no one to be. There's only being. If there are any thoughts, for now just let them come and go, watching them without attachment, with no need to intervene, here in stillness, surrendering into this space of nothing, being no one, not being anyone, just being. And conjure up a sense of happiness and joy in the mind, perhaps casting your mind back to a time in your life when you felt truly happy. As if that feeling were composed of tiny particles of happiness and joy, completely filling your mind. Allowing that feeling of happiness and joy to leave you feeling refreshed on the inside. And cherishing that feeling of happiness and joy for a few moments, as if all the happiness radiates outwards from the center of your body. In the meantime, we just merge into the totality of our surroundings, remaining for a few moments in the stillness of this space. And inside our body, we imagine it's just an empty space, or as if our whole body has been transformed into a sort of bubble. with nothing on the inside. Or equally as if our body has disappeared completely, leaving a great empty space. But we allow our mind to reconnect with that special place inside us which feels like the point of greatest contentment. Somewhere around the area of our diaphragm, and maintaining our attention there as continuously as we can, for as long as we can, not letting our attention slip away to anything else. If you already have an inner object of some sort, you can adopt that as the focus for your meditation. If you don't seem to have anything obvious to focus upon, you can always start by conjuring up one of your own, a visual object or one that you can feel inside you. If your attention wanders away to other things, you simply bring it back again as soon as you realize, and bring it back repeatedly until little by little, keeping the mind centered becomes second nature to us. Remaining always at the center of whatever we can perceive inside us, not as if we were looking down on that point, but as if we were actually there ourselves. So as if we've shifted the whole of our mental office down from the level of our brain to that place at the center of our stomach, with all perception, memory, thought, or cognition in the same place at our center, actually within the object that we perceive. If thoughts return, we do our best to ignore them, to let them die down, to leave a sense of silence in the mind. Silence in which there is nothing but our inner object as the total focus of our attention. If we rest our mind gently, continuously, there'll be a sense in which it's almost like threading a needle. So an extreme lightness of touch, which can allow the mind to reach through to the other side. If we can achieve this level of finesse, we'll start to see the center of the body as much more than just being a point in the mind. It's actually more like a trailhead for a pathway that leads the mind deeper. As for the possible problem of there being thoughts in the mind, if the thoughts are at quite a low level, you can generally get away with just ignoring those thoughts by not encouraging the thoughts. in which case we'll find that one thought will no longer lead to a second or a third, but will die down into silence. But for some of you it may be that the thoughts don't just go away quite as easily as that, in which case you may need to take it to the next level by making use of that mantra, the thought blocking strategy I taught you earlier, which is to hear the sound of the words Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, or something equivalent coming up as you hear those words like a silent music, with the source of the sound at the center of your body. Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, over and over again, lightly, gently, continuously, until at a certain point in your meditation you'll start to find that the thoughts have died down. You may find yourself forgetting the mantra because it's no longer necessary for you anymore. So if that happens, then just be content to remain in silence with nothing but that inner object at the center of yourself. So we cultivate our attention in this way, lightly and gently, keeping our mind on track by means of our inner object, discouraging any thoughts from arising in the mind and touching gently at the center of our inner experience, allowing the mind to go deeper for a few more moments in silence. Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, over and over again, lightly, gently, continuously, helping to keep our mind on track at the center of the body the whole of the time. The mind wanders away each time we realize, we bring the mind back again to the center of the body as before. The inner object disappears, we can think of a new one. If the object changes, then we just follow it in its new form. Following, observing, accepting, as the images or the feelings in the mind evolve. These days there seem to be a lot of terms for meditation buzzing around the internet. It may leave meditators with rather underwhelming expectations for what their meditation can achieve. So-called centering meditation seems to be about gathering up your attention so that you can have it available to you. So-called grounding meditation seems to be connecting with the energy of the earth. So-called visualization meditation seems to be about getting the things you want in your life. And the body scan seems to be about nothing more than physical relaxation. Today we'll see that meditation is about much more than just relaxing or attracting wealth, getting spaced out, gaining superpowers, clairvoyance or divination, because none of these motivations really do justice to the goals of meditation passed down from ancient times. The authentic goals of meditation should at the very least include bringing the mind back inside the space of the body, helping overcome problems in our lives, gaining spiritual refuge, understanding the nature of life, and attaining an end of defilements. So we'll look at each of these objectives in turn. Our initial objective should be to bring the mind back inside the body and to center the body. Because for most of our lives, whether we are working, studying, or solving problems in our lives, our mind is pulled away from our bodies and our center. So meditation has the first objective of bringing the mind back within the space of the body. Because only if the mind is internalized can it shake free of thinking about things in the past or plans for the future. Only if the mind is internalized can it come to a standstill. And since we know a standstill of the mind is a secret of all other success in meditation, this is the first reason why we need to meditate, to bring the mind back within the space of the body. A second reason to meditate, which is really just a byproduct, is to overcome problems in our lives. Meditating can help us to regain so-called headspace in our mind, while taking off the pressure, thereby bringing us a feeling of lightness or happiness or solace in our lives. It will bring us a feeling of happiness and refreshedness, and to give our mind a place to go even in the face of problems. A place which is clean and pure and which is steadfast. These things that we experience along the way help to make the time we spend meditating worthwhile. It's when meditation fosters skillful qualities of mind, whether it be mindfulness, concentration, discernment, persistence, truthfulness, or perseverance, then the whole world is left looking as if it has a new coat of paint. As we work at these qualities, as we put them into action, they get strengthened and become more and more the wise arbiters of our lives, pointing our lives in the direction we really want to go in. And if you've been practicing meditation continuously, even if your mind hasn't yet reached the point of attainment, along the way meditation is still a skillful activity in terms of developing conviction, persistence, and the perfection of our character. So even if you haven't attained something transcendental, don't be discouraged thinking that you haven't benefited from your meditation. Even at this point, it will become clear that meditation has more benefits deriving from the journey, even before you reach the destination. The byproduct of the journey is that problems in our life will gradually disappear along the way. Once the mind has relocated its source of happiness from the external to the internal, you find that meditation starts to generate a sort of spiritual energy, sometimes known as merit, which makes our path easier. Those who want to improve their lives, such merit makes life better. And accumulating merit is a perfectly valid reason to meditate. The great abbot of Wat Phra Nam, the founder of this meditation tradition, compared the merit of meditation, even lasting for no longer than the flap of an elephant's ear or the flick of a snake's tongue, to be more than the merit of building many permanent temple structures. While meditation may not seem as benevolent or altruistic as other charitable deeds, the simple act of meditating is a perfectly valid way of attaining merit. It develops a mind of goodwill, meaning meditation is not only a fairly easy and simple way to collect merit, because merit benefits all who have it, and serves as a key to improving one's happiness and good fortune throughout this life and the hereafter. And this is the second reason we need to meditate, because it helps us overcome problems in our lives. A step deeper in the benefits of meditation is it will allow us to gain a refuge. Meditation draws the mind inward, and the mind will move all by itself to attain inner peace. Whether you want to describe that as the diamond bright sphere at the center of the body, or the body of enlightenment, we can attain a refuge in life by meditation. We will gain a feeling of safety and confidence in our lives, which is a valid third reason that we need to meditate in order to gain that refuge. A fourth reason to meditate is to gain an understanding of life and learn about who we really are. In this middle phase of meditation, we can start to explore the life according to reality. Meditation will provide us with the opportunity to see life as it really is, to see beyond suffering and impermanence, while not becoming attached to an illusory ego. If we can come to know these truths, then because of this understanding, we'll be able to have realistic expectations about life in a way that minimizes the shadows of suffering. And this is a valid fourth reason that we need to meditate, to understand life as it really is. The fifth reason to meditate is to bring ourselves to an end of defilements, whether it be greed, hatred, or delusion. Eventually, if we persevere in our meditation, we'll be able to overcome all of the defilements in the mind, in order to break free from suffering once and for all. So this is something that we need to spend our time doing. You could say it's our real purpose in life, or our birthright. And anything else in our lives is relatively unimportant by comparison. So this is a fifth reason that we need to meditate in order to reach an end of defilements. And the question remains how we can get to these goals. Ironically, the best way is not to think of the goal, but rather to concentrate on technique. rather like a tennis player who concentrates on hitting the ball properly, rather than where they expect the ball to land. Meditation shouldn't be about grasping after results, because after all we know that craving is a source of suffering. Meditation shouldn't be mixed up with craving, because everything we need to attain is already within us. So all we have to do is let the mind become refined enough to perceive it. Because we know that the stopping of the mind is a secret of success. In other words, the 4 C's, concentration and comfort in balance, consistency and checking to make sure that we are on the right track. These 4 C's together can help us to achieve the goals that we've set out to attain. In the meantime, the practicality of moving towards the correct goals in meditation is that practice makes perfect. Meditation is much like playing a sport or an instrument. It's a practice that requires doing, and on a regular basis. It cannot be fully understood in theory or without first-hand experience. Regardless of the reasons one chooses to meditate, there are substantial motivations to meditate, whether you're coming from a Buddhist background or not. But to fully understand meditation and why millions of people practice it requires much more than what you can learn on online articles or in books. But ultimately we have to do our own work, something that no one else can do for us. Although we may know about this process of purification, we know about the potential of the enlightened ones and meditation teachers, we have to accept that they can only point the way. No one can save us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path, and our mentors and teachers can only point the way. But in the meantime, we should bear in mind that meditation aims, whether it be to bring the mind back inside the body, to help us overcome problems in our lives, to gain spiritual refuge, to understand the nature of life, to attain an end of defilements. We should not let our expectations fall short of these. In the meantime, we shouldn't compare our meditation experiences favorably or unfavorably with our fellow meditators. So for now, with the knowledge of the full spectrum of benefits coming from meditation, we cultivate our mind lightly and gently, keeping our mind on track by means of our inner object, and discouraging any thoughts from arising in the mind, while touching gently at the center of our inner experience, allowing the mind to go deeper for a few more moments in silence. Sappa Buddhanupavena, Sappa Dhammanupavena, Sappa Sankhanupavena, Sattha Soti Bhavantu Te. So if you'd like to come to the end of your meditation for today, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position and gradually finish your practice. So to come gently back to the subject matter for today, association with the wise, it turns out that in addition to the telltale signs of habitual behaviors, virtues, perception of profit in life, and quality of mind or discretion mentioned earlier, the wise one can also be identified by their ability to be a true friend, who through their friendship shows responsibility for their own personal dignity, for the human dignity of others, and for a fair economic system. In our association with such wise ones, we will be able to recognize their level of responsibility by the way they treat us, which also happens to be the qualities that facilitates good habits brushing off on us. Again, the Sigalovada Sutta is our source for the qualities of true friendship by the wise. In the northern quarter of the Sigalovada Sutta, it illustrates how good friends should treat each other, at least in broad brushstrokes. The Buddha divided true friends into 4 groups. Firstly, those who are helpful and act for others' welfare. Any compassionate person, when a friend experiences hardship or suffering, would do anything to help their friend escape that hardship. Secondly, they will be consistent in their friendship. However they have behaved towards their friends in the past, they will not suddenly change to treat them better or worse because of force of circumstances, not suddenly ghosting friends who fall on hard times, or sucking up to friends when they come into some money. Third, they will be a friend of wise counsel. And lastly, they will be a sympathetic friend. These broad brushstrokes are expanded in detail to 10 duties between friends in one place in the same Sigalovada Sutta and 16 in another place. As there is some overlap, to save time, I will combine the repetitions. So, in being a true friend and fostering virtue in those around them, a wise one will be generous. Any compassionate person, when seeing friends experiencing hardship or suffering, would sacrifice anything to help their friend escape that hardship. They will have kind words and show their friendship by habitually speaking only words that are polite and true. Thirdly, they will never tell lies to those they count as their friends. Lastly, they will even show due respect to other members of our family, our children and our grandchildren, and even those to whom we have debts of gratitude, as if they were part of our own adoptive family. Furthermore, a wise one will be a helpful friend by protecting you even when you are off your guard. If we are careless or behave recklessly, they will look out for us. They will help protect our property even when we neglect it, for example, returning our cell phone if they notice we've forgotten it somewhere. They will be our refuge in times of danger, as the saying goes, a friend in need is a friend indeed. And to keep it practical, the scriptures mention that a true friend always provides you with twice as much as you ask for. A wise one will be a constant friend in bad times and good by confiding in you, but they don't go spreading your secrets around. They don't abandon you when you fall on hard times, and they would even die in your place. A wise one will be a friend of good counsel by warning you against unwholesome behavior, encouraging you towards wholesome behavior, saving up new things to tell you, and having your spiritual welfare at heart by pointing you in the direction of heaven. Lastly, a wise one will be a sympathetic friend by not laughing at your misfortunes, by congratulating you when you have good fortune, by speaking out against anyone who maligns you, and standing up for those who speak well of you. As you can see, The friendship of the wise one is all about bringing out positivity in a person, and at this point we might reflect on how our own friendship to other people measures up to the standards set by a wise one. If we have ever had the luck to come across such a genuine friend, we should take care to associate closely with them and treat them with the utmost respect. It's pertinent to observe that such a genuine friend could only arise in the world as a result of an amenable environment, which we will see more of in blessing number 4, especially their human environment when growing up. In order for the wise one to have stored up such high standards of friendship, it is such people that society really is crying out for, because such a person has tremendous power of virtue stored up inside them, sufficient power to elevate the moral tone of society and of the economic system. The Buddha taught 7 ways we can effectively respond to the friendship of the wise. If your association lacks any of these 7 factors, the chance for good habits to brush off on us will be diminished. The 7 features start with meeting up with them frequently. If you know that someone has the characteristics of a wise person, you ought to seek them out and visit them regularly. If you hear that such and such a temple is attended by wise people, then you should visit regularly. Generally, there will be a sense of recognition when you first meet your wise one, as if you have already been friends for 1,000 years or over many lifetimes, because both of you have spiritual truth in your hearts, and that is the spiritual truth that binds your association. Secondly, we need to make ourselves known to the wise. What this means is that, having met up with a wise person, you should make yourself known to them, not just sit out of their line of sight around the corner or hide when the monks are coming. And it goes further than just taking a selfie with the meditation teacher. Third, we need to be sincere towards them. How can they help fix your faults if you lie about what you've done? There should be no secret which a wise one can't ask you about and get a straight answer. Fourth, we need to have a loyalty towards them, which means that the apprenticeship is not entered into lightly. Traditionally, the functions that illustrate loyalty are that you should speak out against those that malign the wise and stand up for those who speak well of them. Fifth, we should help the wise in times of need. Whenever we notice the wise person is busy with something that we could help with, we should offer our assistance without reluctance. In this way, we can start to observe the habits of a wise one behind the scenes and learn from their example as well as their words. Sixth, when we are free, we should join up with the wise one to talk or eat together, since free time spent together will be the opportunity to discuss the Dhamma and to clear up any doubts we have, rather than being the chance to gossip about the neighbors. Lastly, we need to reflect on whatever Dharma the wise have imparted to us and get down to practicing it in earnest. This is the most important component of association. Even if you've diligently followed the previous 6 steps but omit this 7th step, then you cannot call it true association. Also, if you do none of the first 6 but you do the 7th one, it is as good as true association, because ultimately the outcomes of association would be for us to end up practicing self-discipline or sila, which would give rise to a well-focused mind or samadhi, and eventually wisdom in ourselves or panya. The behavior we refer to as association means that whatever happens, you will do things in togetherness, remembering the 3 words we mentioned in the previous blessing: joining, receiving, and giving. If there is a task, you will work together, accepting each other's help. Anything good you have will be something you want to share with them, and ultimately you will start to share each other's view of the world. If there are no genuinely wise ones to be found in society, or if those posing as wise fail to cherish others as advised by this blessing, a lot of harm will come to society on the level of the individual, interpersonal, and social levels. Many of the potential problems can be extrapolated from the individual neglect to the way those in power treat the individuals who they are supposed to serve. In certain countries where those in power fail to offer a wise friendship to their citizens, the problems reach the national level. This is particularly seen where the great and good act in a way that is irresponsible towards human dignity. On an individual level, they can't be bothered to keep the 5 precepts, have a negative worldview, and mistreat their friends. They disrespect the human dignity of others by harboring prejudice, being unpatriotic, and abusing their position. Irresponsibility for human dignity on the economic level may mean that they get involved in corruption, especially concerning the roads to ruin. Some of these problems are brought to light in the press, others remain hidden. This is why in this social perspective on the fools and the wise in society, we can use the same principles by electing wise ones rather than fools into positions of authority. In the meantime, we should use all the definitions of the wise one and the characteristics of friendship we've studied today to scrutinize ourselves, and in the meantime associate with the wise so that our goodness can start to repair the shortcomings in our own character. In a world of clear dichotomies, we would be able to separate clearly between those who are 100% fools and those who are 100% wise with no middle ground. The reality, however, is that there is an extensive grey area in between. Of course, there are those who we could count as truly wise, which might include the Buddha and those who have attained various levels of Buddhist enlightenment. However, this doesn't mean that we should dismiss anyone else with a lesser degree of wisdom as no use to us in our search for noble friends to associate with. Even if someone is partially wise, but has more wisdom than us, it is still useful to associate with them. For example, the partially wise might be monks who are training themselves earnestly in meditation, but who have not yet reached enlightenment. In our lives, there may be many people who we consider our elders and betters who are also partially wise, but who have bad habits as well. They might be parents or teachers. In such a case, it might not be our place to take the moral high ground. Nonetheless, we should try to sift out any wisdom that they can offer us and learn from that while not joining in with anything that is obviously a bad habit, whether it's be drinking alcohol or visits to the turf accountants. We have to do our best to learn only from their good points and mimic only these. If that person has their faults, it's not our place at this stage anyway to criticize them for those habits, because for as long as we haven't come to an end of defilements ourselves, we would be better criticizing ourselves rather than other people. In the meantime, don't let others' minor faults blind you to all their virtues. If you're only interested in other people's faults, by the time you have picked on everyone else's weaknesses, there'll be only one person left in the world who you think is any good, and that will be yourself. If you keep this advice in mind, both the fully wise and the partially wise are beneficial to associate with. Just as with fools, although we might reassure ourselves that we would never succumb to fools or need to rely on the wise one in the outside world, there's another level of meaning that none of us can ignore. Broadly speaking, there are 2 categories of the wise ones in the outside world and the wise ones inside us. You may have noticed that sometimes when we think of doing something unwholesome, there will be a little voice inside that warns us not to do it. Have you wondered where that little voice inside comes from? Usually, we cannot see whose voice it is, but if we meditate until our mind is much clearer, we'll be able to see the wise one inside us who is the owner of the voice. That still small voice, whether it be in the form of knowledge as a voice or the content of a dream or sixth sense, is transferred down the line from deep inside ourselves like a baton between runners in a relay race. So I'd like to finish off with a story to illustrate how brief contact with a wise one can turn around a person's destiny in life. There's a Buddhist story to illustrate Dhammapada, verse 100, which says, "Better than 1,000 words that are senseless and unconnected with the realization of Nirvana is a single word of sense, if on hearing it one is calmed." The story tells of a public executioner in the ancient Indian city of Rajagaha. The executioner was a scary-looking guy with a red beard, copper-colored teeth, tawny skin, and a body covered in scars. He wanted to join a band of 500 thieves, but for a long time the ringleader refused to accept him because he looked so untrustworthy. In the end, he was allowed to join the band of thieves, but shortly afterwards the thieves were rounded up by the army and no one could be found to execute them. The red-bearded guy, whose name was Tambadatika, agreed to do the executions in return for his own freedom. So he wasn't even loyal to his fellow thieves. He betrayed all his colleagues and executed all 500 of them. He was so admired for his stamina that they offered him a career as public executioner, and he continued in post for 55 years. When he became too old to behead a prisoner with a single blow, he was allowed to retire. The tradition for retirement was to be given a golden handshake consisting of 4 gifts: a new set of clothes, milk porridge made with fresh ghee, jasmine garlands, and perfume. So, to prepare for his retirement gift, he went to the river and bathed. Having done so, he put on his new clothes, decked himself with garlands, and anointed his limbs with perfume before going home and sitting down for his meal. They set the delicacy before him together with some water for rinsing his hands. Just as he was about to start his meal, the Venerable Sariputta, who had just arisen from a long meditation, stood within sight of the executioner's door, gathering alms food. Seeing the monk, Tambadatika thought to himself, "Throughout my life I have done nothing but execute people. For once in my life I should do a good deed." So he invited Sariputta to come in and respectfully offered the special retirement delicacy to the monk. After the meal, Sariputta taught Dhamma to the executioner, but Tambadatika could not pay attention because he was extremely disturbed by recollections of his past career as an executioner. This mental disturbance did not allow him to concentrate properly. Sariputta realized this, and in order to put the man in a proper frame of mind, he asked Tambadatika tactfully whether he had chosen to execute others or had simply done it because he was ordered to do so. Tambadatika answered that he only did his duty as an executioner to follow orders. "If that is the case," Sariputta answered, "then what do you have to worry about?" Thus reassured, Tambadatika's mind became calmer and he requested Sariputta to continue the sermon. As the executioner listened to the Dharma attentively, his mind became tranquil and he became more patient and more understanding. After the discourse, Tambadatika accompanied Sariputta for some distance and then started to walk back towards his home. Still contemplating the purity of mind he had learned from Sariputta, on his way home, however, he was suddenly gored to death by a mad cow. When the Buddha visited the congregation of the monks in the evening, they informed him about the death of Tambadatika and wanted to know where he had been reborn. The Buddha told them that although Tambadatika had committed unwholesome deeds throughout his life, because he had comprehended the Dharma, he had been reborn in the 4th level of heaven. The monks wondered how it could be possible that such an evil ruffian could accrue such great benefit after listening to the Dharma only once. To them, the Buddha said that the number of times one listened to the Dharma was immaterial, because even one single sentence of the Dharma correctly understood can produce much benefit. So, just as Tambadatika could benefit so much from associating with a wise one for only a short time, We also need to seek out the wise ones in our own lives and find the best ways to associate with them. If we know that anyone is a good example, then we should make sure we get to know that person. That way, the good character that makes that person wise will start to brush off on us as well. Secondly, once we have seen the nature of those who are a good example to follow, we should start to cultivate wisdom within our own mind. If we already have inner wisdom, even if we never encounter a wise person again, it will not matter because we already have secured our inner source of wisdom from which we can be a good teacher to ourselves. So this session, I have introduced blessing number 2, associating with the wise to you. For my next live session online, which will, fingers crossed, be a week on Sunday morning, I'll move on to the third blessing on the topic of respecting those worthy of respect. For good measure, I would like to remind viewers that you can email questions about meditation or what you've heard in the lecture to the email address you can see spelled out in the slide, and I will do my best to answer these on my next session. In the meantime, try to stay healthy, avoid recklessness or complacency in the face of the virus, maintain a positive mood, speak only positive words, forgive others, extend good wishes to others, and meditate daily. Hopefully, as a result of today's session, you will be equipped to recognize wise ones in your lives and in yourself. And now you will have a strategy for associating with them to the full. So, for today, this is me, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, signing off for this session. So long, folks, and stay safe.